Hey everybody, welcome to Tip of the Spear Ministries. As always, we're trying to bring the best voices out there in the world to comment on what's going on around us, not only in our country, but around the world. And today I am joined with one of my heroes of the faith, Carl Teichrib. Carl, I've been following Carl for a long time, and Carl is a Canadian-based researcher, and he does primary research. He goes to all these events. I was just talking to him off the air. He went to a NATO conference, and then he goes to Burning Man and other things, and he goes and hears what these people are saying, what they're doing, and then is able to bring that to us as Christians and say, hey, let me tell you what's going on. So he is, I love him, man. If you're not familiar with Carl, you need to be familiar with him. He explores all the cultural and spiritual shifts in the West and the impact on the church and Christians. And like I said, man, he goes to the Parliament of World Religions and all kinds of these things that you wouldn't think that a Christian would go to, but he goes there for research and brings all this information back. The other thing you have to get is his book, Game of Gods. It is a big, thick book, but you will love it. It has tremendous insight. It's just an investigation in the changing nature of Western civilization, really talking about the replacement of the Judeo-Christian framework with basically paganism, an ancient paradigm that's going on in the world. And so he goes into this, he explains the realm of this transformational movement, all these forces that are working. And so you want to make sure you get that book. It is fantastic. So anyway, let's bring on to the show Carl Teichrib. Carl, thanks for joining us, my friend.
Brandon, it's good to be with you. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, and hey, I'm looking forward to bringing you out. You're coming in the fall, on October 4th. You'll be here, right here in crazy California, coming from Canada. And so we're excited to have you. And I just want to put a plug in. Guys, make sure you come to our conference October 4th. We're going to be talking about how the church can reclaim the culture and fight back against the darkness and paganism. And Carl is going to be one of our main speakers. So we're pumped to have you, Carl. So Carl, we were talking off air. You've been doing some traveling and you've been going to different places. Again, you're a primary researcher. And one of the places you're getting ready to go is to like a conference about psychedelics. And I think this is important for our audience to understand, because here's what I'm hearing on different podcasts. And they're not so much Christian podcasts, but they're guys like they're ex-Navy SEALs and they have PTSD and they're claiming to be Christian. And then they said they went through a psychedelic trip that was managed by someone in Mexico, a clinic in Mexico. And they were praising the fact that when they went through this psychedelic trip, that it cured their PTSD, it cured their addictions. They were addicted to alcohol, drugs, and everything, and it cured their addictions. And so now they're singing the praises of psychedelics. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a second, there's a problem here. And I wanted you to kind of unpack it. I think our audience needs to understand that this is a new realm that people are going in. What spurred this on, Carl?
Very important subject, Brandon, very, very important for the church. And one of those subjects that, for the most part, the Christian community has been oblivious to. Yeah. Yet it's going to come along and smack us right up the side of the head. And it kind of is doing that already. So from my perspective, the reason I'm interested in this topic, and I've been interested in it for a long time, is because when you do the cultural research and you start to unpack the last 50 years, you realize how important the introduction of psychedelics into the Western culture shaped our social norms and really had a huge part to play in the transformation of Western civilization from a Judeo-Christian value system to a spiritual but not religious perspective. Yeah. And so the 1960s and the 1970s were fundamental in that. And of course, that's a really important period, Brandon, because materialism, hard materialism, naturalism had already kind of worn its welcome out, and people were searching for something. They weren't accepting the Christian biblical truths, but they were looking for some type of spirituality to help guide them forward. Yeah, so that foundation is important if we want to understand that shift in Western culture, in America particularly. You end up having to examine the 60s, and you see it there. Then, of course, you have the criminalization of psychedelic substances. We tend to forget sometimes that some of these substances weren't criminalized until the 1960s.
Yeah, good point.
And then you had the criminalization of these substances, but in the 1990s, there was kind of a renewed interest in what psychedelics could potentially do. And at this point, I think we are in a 20-year renaissance of sorts with psychedelics.
Okay.
And it's just now starting to hit the Christian community. So I'll give you an example, and this is kind of a crazy example, but I'm holding here the Parliament of World Religions. This is the 2023 agenda book. And one of the topics was on sacramental plants and the use of psychedelics to help you develop a deeper spiritual life, a deeper spiritual understanding. And they recognize that these mystical experiences do shift your mind. They do shift the way that you perceive reality. Now, after this was done, after I went here and heard the institutionalizing of psychedelics, as he described how psychedelics and psychedelic spirituality needs to enter the realm of seminaries and chaplaincy services.
Wow.
And we need to integrate it into that institutional level of Christianity. 2 weeks later, Brandon, I'm at Burning Man, and I'm at a progressive Christian camp. Where I'm there to hear a panel discussion on psychedelics and Jesus. And so while I heard at the Parliament of World Religions the importance of integrating psychedelics into the institutional side, at Burning Man, I was hearing it now being justified at a personal level as we were hearing Episcopal ministers. I believe there was a Baptist minister. I'd have to go through my notes again. But we've got a bunch of people claiming to be Christians, including people in Christian leadership saying, "Oh, after doing psilocybin, after doing LSD, after taking my ayahuasca trip, I now have had an encounter with the divine.
Yeah.
I feel agape love. I now have a new lens through which to view Scripture." And so, if that's where it's going already, and I can tell you right now, the Christian community specifically is being impacted through the progressive side, which we could argue is a heretical side of Christianity. It's a movement away from the authority of Scripture into more or less that self-realization, your self-spirituality, and kind of an eclectic mishmash of ideas. Nevertheless, it's landed in that world. And if it's landed in that world, it's going to land in your world.
Sure. Absolutely.
So there's a lot of stuff there. Now, may it be helpful in terms of, let's say, PTSD, addiction recovery? It may be. There may be some valid medical, components to this. A lot of medications obviously do. But, Brandon, for myself, the real issue is, all right, this is a worldview game changer.
Yeah.
That's really what's at stake, is the worldview behind it, because you feel it. And now that feeling, that inner experience becomes, your own personal litmus test for the divine. And now you feel God, or you are God, or you now have had some divine encounter.
Yeah.
Or you say you've had the death experience, and now you no longer are afraid of death. Hold on. You've had an illusionary death experience. You did not stand before the judge.
Right.
Period. Full stop. Right. You did not. You had an illusionary death experience, but it is not the same. I just had a very good friend of mine yesterday who passed away, a true death. He stood before his judge and he heard the words, "Well done, good and faithful servant."
Right.
That's the death experience that us as Christians, we look forward to. But when you're doing psychedelics and now you claim, "Oh, I've seen the other side," no, I'm sorry. That's a false claim that is grounded in something that has neurochemically happened to you, and now you're saying I'm no longer afraid of death. That's actually a kind of a dangerous position to be in.
Yeah.
I'd rather have a little bit of fear, not of the actual process of death, but standing before my God.
Right. Right. So I want to delve a little bit deeper into that because I've heard what they have said, and I want you to talk about this because to me, Carl, it sounds like when they're doing the psychedelics, they're entering into a spiritual realm. And here's what I have heard these people say, and these are so-called Christians who claim to be believers in Christ. And they say that they had this death experience, and I guess it's some gland, I can't remember what they said, but something empties out. Like it does in death. And you have this emptying out and you feel like you're dying. And then they explain, they're trying to explain the benefits of this. And they're saying that they did the psychedelics and then as they were having that gland or whatever empty out of the chemical that's in there, they had to start letting go of things like materialism, their family, or anything like that in this death experience. And then in this death experience, they saw in the spiritual realm, I guess you want to call it, that how there was energy and everything is connected and united. It sounded very pagan to me. That everything was interconnected somehow, some way. You can see these energies flowing off of people and flowing off of plants and anything, you know. And then they said that in some cases, some of them were actually able to talk to so-called angels or other spirit creatures. They never called them demons or fallen angels, but they were able to talk to these other spiritual beings that were there to help them or something like that. Carl, when I hear that, that just freaks me out to think, I don't think you're having a good experience. I think this is dangerous. What do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely, it's dangerous. Number one, there is certainly an element of suggestibility that comes through it. No doubt about that. And in fact, Timothy Leary makes that very clear when you go through the literature that you need the right set and setting. You need to already be, kind of grounded in what your expectations are in terms of this experience. And so there's a level of suggestibility that immediately comes into the picture. And then you are potentially meeting entities. In fact, just before you and I are having this conversation, I got off the phone with a good buddy who's had lots of experience. I have never had the psychedelic experience. I've studied the literature inside and out. I've been to their events. I've observed and I've documented, but I've never experienced. I don't desire that experience. I don't need that experience. There's nothing that compels me towards that. Yeah. But there is absolutely a level where there is the potential to encounter entities. And they, within the literature and also talking to those who've experienced this, they don't make any bones about it. There is this encounter that takes place, an interaction at a spiritual level. Yeah. So I'll give you an example. And this is kind of a crazy example. Last year, I went to the Texas Eclipse Festival, okay? About 35 to 40,000 people were there to venerate the sun. And I do mean literally in the sense of venerating the sun. Yeah, wow. Brandon, this is nuts. Everybody thinks, the eclipse was, last year's eclipse was going to be, it was a way marker to God's judgment because it crisscrossed the 2017 lines and it did all this kind of stuff. Yeah. This is just a side note, but only in North America would we make those kind of assumptions, because the same type of experiences of the solar eclipse crisscrossing itself has occurred in Africa and China and India and in the Atlantic and in the Pacific, and nobody cared before social media.
Right.
Nobody. Right. And all of a sudden, social media just lit up with this, all the doomsday around this eclipse event. And I'm like, we're all missing the real event. The real event was happening in Texas and along the path as small, and in the case I was at, large transformational festivals
Wow.
were being established so that people could venerate the sun. There's actually a sub-movement within the Burning Man culture, the transformational culture, and that sub-movement has been around since the 1970s, and it is to chase the solar eclipse and to experience it and then have a spiritual connection as your feet are on the ground, you're aligned with the moon and aligned with the sun, and you're feeling the energy, so to speak.
Wow.
So, okay. So that's where I was last year at the Texas Eclipse Festival. Why is this relevant to the psychedelic side?
Okay.
Because psychedelics was discussed in a major way. We had some of the leading figures in the realm of psychedelics describe the worldview change, describe the interactions with entities. In fact, we had one process engineer attached to the space industry, an older gentleman, and he admitted to us, and I'd have to dig up my notes, but he admitted to us to the effect of, after he goes into a psychedelic a trance, he will have an experience where the entities will download to him new engineering processes.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Right.
And then
crazy,
then he takes that and he puts it on paper. He fleshes it out, and all of a sudden, there's a new propulsion system or a new fuel delivery system, or some other hard engineered component of the projects he's working on. But he didn't come up with that himself, and he was very clear about that. It was downloaded to him by the experience of having this entity encounter through the use of psychedelics. And Brandon, there are loads and loads of stories and witness encounters of this type of interaction. So there's a gateway. There's something going on. It's opening up the mind to something. Allow me, if possible.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to read a little section out of Great Game of Gods. It's just one of the only pieces of speculation in my book.
Okay.
I don't speculate much, but this is a little piece of speculation, and it's kind of fun. I don't really know where this exactly will land, because this is just conjecture.
Sure.
An interesting speculation can be extrapolated, and I stress that this is conjecture only. Could a worldwide spiritual experience be the catalyst for global unity? If so, how might this be achieved? Might a psychedelic agent be designed to induce human oneness? And could this agent be in the form of a mark, a personal identifier permanently placed on the hand or forehead? This mark, a tangible sign of global citizenship, like a digital loyalty card, would be needed for buying and selling. Possibly this mark could be tailored to interact with one's genetics and brain chemistry, unlocking a stimulant that heightens perception and induces flow, like a manageable global upper that everyone experiences together and no one wants to be without or opt out of. There'd be no spectators in the networked planet. Everybody would be a participant in the global myth of a brave new world. Maybe this transhuman elixir would be called Soma.
Wow.
And it was I was playing around with, all right, psychedelics, global unity, the techno future, all of that, and it was a thought that kind of came to my mind. So, there's more to this side of this, the psychedelic component, I think, than most Christians realize, in that it is really a spiritual game changer. It says, hey, I've had the experience. And nobody can argue the experience.
Right.
Whereas in the Christian world, we're going, no, we have the promise.
Yes.
And the promise comes from someone who is trustworthy, always. And the experience versus the trust is where the world divides. Do we trust God with the experience or without an experience? Which is it? Because let me tell you, I've had some great experiences, and I've had some horrible experiences, and we all have.
Sure.
But regardless how I feel, regardless how you feel, Brandon, regardless how anybody listening to this feels, whether that feeling is brought by a psychedelic substance or, a natural dopamine release, whatever, or you feel horrible, regardless, the issue is for us as Christians is we trust God.
Yeah.
Period.
Wow. Yeah, you're hitting on a very fundamental problem, and I'm seeing it in the church. And Carl, you know, if you see the trends that are happening in the church, a lot of the churches are feeling based, they're experience based. You know, we call it worshiptainment. They're doing the fog machines and all of that, and so then you already have this trend of experience in the church, experiencing God. And Carl, if you added psychedelics to this, man, it just goes right in line with what they're already practicing on a totally different level. Because you're absolutely right. I've talked to several people that have done psychedelics or even done mushrooms or anything like that. And they all report the same thing, Carl, that you're describing, that it made them go into a spiritual realm. They have an avatar or some type of spiritual creature or someone from the future. And the word they use is exactly the same word you used. I was downloaded information. Secrets of the universe were given to me. And then here's the scary part. I've heard many people up in where we live in the Silicon Valley, up there where all the tech stuff's coming from. And many of the tech guys have said they have done psychedelics and they had downloaded information about the internet and technology and connectiveness. And I'm thinking, something's getting set up, Carl. And I think you're right.
Yeah.
Blending the technology with the psychedelics and the experience, I think you're totally on point with that, man.
Well, you know, we forget that Steve Jobs himself was very open that LSD played a role in the development of the Apple computer.
Right.
Right. And when I go to Burning Man, and Lord willing, I'm back again this year, I am going specifically to workshops on psychedelics, put in place, those workshops held by major figures in the cryptocurrency space, major figures within the Silicon Valley. They're very keen on bringing the two together because they already have brought the two together. And, you know, and so there is a sense that, and you get this from the psychedelic community, there is a sense that this is going to be a world changer. And there's a reason for that, because there is I'm going to call it a mythos that is held within so much of the psychedelic realm. And the mythos is built around something called the stoned ape or the stoned monkey theory. Have you ever heard of this? The stoned monkey theory?
Explain that.
Okay. So Terence McKinnon, who's kind of like a thought leader within the psychedelic world, talked about the stoned monkey theory or the stoned ape theory. And it goes like this. And I'm just going to give you the rough outline of it.
Okay.
Many eons ago, millions and millions of years ago, some monkeys were walking through the forest and stumbled upon some mushrooms. And the monkeys ingested the mushrooms. And they turned out to be psychedelic mushrooms. And their minds opened, their consciousness expanded, and they began a cosmic conscious evolution into hominoid, into human beings. And that is the evolutionary link between monkeys and man.
Wow.
So when I've been to the workshops at Burning Man on psychedelics and to other events where psychedelics are being discussed, this theory, and it's not a theory, it's a mythical hypothesis.
Okay.
This mythos is often brought in as a reason why the whole world needs to be integrated into psychedelic spirituality, because it is, in their view, a step towards spiritual evolution, and they frame it that way.
Wow.
That this is the next level to upload ourselves and become what we were always meant to be, cosmic God beings on planet Earth.
Unbelievable. Wow.
Yep.
So that's interesting that it's tied to the evolutionary paradigm, because it seems to be that you know, when you're going away from God, that seems to be the only thing you start relying on, that, you know, either aliens put us here and we evolved, or, you know, now you're saying the psychedelics are the ones that are causing the spiritual evolution, but it always seems to be tacked onto this evolutionary mindset. Do you think, Carl, You got Darwinian evolution, but that's biological. But do you think one of Satan's greatest tricks is to push spiritual evolution? Because when I study Mormonism, for instance, there's a spiritual evolution there where a man can become a god, and I see the same, spiritual evolution. So I guess maybe correct me if I'm wrong. Do you see in pagan culture a spiritual evolution happening in history before even Darwinian evolution was ever put on the ground?
100%.
Okay.
In fact, it is the fundamental issue of all human history. And here's where it lands. Genesis chapter 3. You can be as God.
Okay.
That's your first promise of spiritual evolution.
Yeah.
Right. The lie that was given, the lie that was given was not a political lie. It was not saying, hey, we're going to set up, a political kingdom, or you're going to gain riches or glory or fame. None of these things are you going to become strong or more beautiful. The first couple, Adam and Eve, didn't have those concepts probably to work with. That wasn't really the deal.
Right.
But the fundamental, this is the literally the core of our being, was deceived in that we were granted the promise of spiritual evolution and to become as our maker, to become as God. And there is absolutely a link between the psychedelic argument that now your spiritual experience through psychedelics will give you a greater sense of consciousness. You can attain a divine essence as you are now encountering these beings or having this experience of flow and oneness, or Mormonism, or if you go into Freemasonry with some of its claims that you find in esoteric masonry about becoming godlike. The list goes on. Or we play these games even politically. Mao Zedong and I actually source it in my book, talks about how, the people need to worship a leader.
Yeah.
He was a materialist, but he understood the importance of worship. He understood the importance of this connection. And so this is, all right, man. It's a shameless plug, I guess. I'm going to hold up the copy of the book, the title.
Game of Gods, yeah.
Game of Gods. Totally. And that's the game we've been playing since Genesis chapter 3.
Wow. No, that totally makes sense, man. And so, Carl, let's go down this rabbit hole a little bit. The connection with this spiritual evolution, psychedelics, and technology, because I see the two intertwined, and we have a good mutual friend, Patrick Wood, that talks about technocracy, and he's always trying to say, look, man, that technocracy is intertwined with transhumanism, going to humans 2.0. So this sounds like it's right in line with that, with connecting to technology.
Oh, yeah. No, it definitely fits. And there is conversation in some of the transhumanist community, not all, around what potential does psychedelics play. That's there. But the concept of spirituality within transhumanism is absolutely, it's there, even though the majority of transhumanists, I'm going to pull up one book.
Go ahead.
Zoltan Itzvan, in his book, he's an atheist, okay. And the subtitle is "A Transhumanist Explores Religion, Spirituality, and Atheism." And he's an atheist, and he makes no bones about that.
Yeah,
he was the one who put the transhumanist party in motion and drove across America. This is a number of years ago in a coffin-shaped bus, as he was campaigning to be U.S. president.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, there is this conversation in the transhumanist community over the issue of spirituality and religion. In fact, in 2013, you can find this on the Mormon Transhumanist Association's YouTube page, but in 2013, I was brought in to speak to the Mormon transhumanists as a Christian giving a criticism of religious transhumanism. So it's been there. It's been in play. You can go and watch the 15 or 18 minute kind of little conversation I had, or explanation I gave regarding a Christian criticism of religious transhumanism. Here's another example, and this is, again, 2013. This is an old example, but this is the Global 2045 International Congress that took place in New York City with leading players within the transhumanist movement. And Dmitry Itskov, who was a Russian internet mogul, put it this way regarding this new evolutionary strategy. That's his terms. On the path to a new evolutionary strategy, that this is, I'll put it this way. I'll just read the piece.
Yeah,
I am certain that if we want to continue to develop and change civilization for the better, we should resolve this evolutionary dilemma and create a new evolutionary strategy taking us to a society based on the 5 principles of high spirituality, high culture, high ethics, high science, and high technology. So the sense of spiritual interplay within technology and what it potentially promises us is certainly something that is being considered.
That's, here's the thing, and I always go back to the scriptures like you do. This reminds me of building the Tower of Babel, where you had technology and spirituality wrapped up into one. Am I off on that, or is that are they trying to rebuild the Tower of Babel?
Yeah, it's interesting because the technology behind the Tower of Babel is first and foremost a city.
Yeah.
So we often, and I do this. This is something that comes out of my class. I teach a class on secular pagan trends, and it's to a small Christian college.
Okay.
And I have a section I deal on architecture, and I ask the question of my class, and the class is like 40, 50, sometimes 60 students. I ask the question of the class, can you name me the first city in the Bible? And everybody's like, Babel. But it's not.
It's not.
It's Genesis. You'll find it in Genesis chapter 4.
Right.
It's when Cain is given the curse to wander.
Yeah.
How does Cain respond to the curse? By settling and building.
Yes, right.
And in other words, I don't trust God's promise of protection. I now need to protect myself. And there is this, let's call it maybe a spiritual principle behind the concept of the city, and it is man's attempt to create a new form of Eden. It is where it's where we place our politics. It's where we place our power. It's where we project our power. It's where we claim our pride and we claim our unity. And we, in the words of Genesis, the Bible story, it's where we make a name for ourselves.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So it has that impetus, that spiritual dimension to it. It's not claiming that cities are horrible. I don't live in a city, don't want to live in a city. But this is not the claim that cities are horrible, but rather it has that dimension that goes beyond just simply the architecture. There's a meaning behind it. And so it is a form of technology where man is claiming, and this is you're seeing in the Babel story, as you read that section, they build a city and a tower. The two of them are connected. The two of them are together. And it is our attempt through the works of our hands, which is, we're using technology right now. It's the works of our hands. So there's nothing wrong with technology. It is the work of our hands.
Yeah.
But it's the work of our hands done in such a manner where we say we trust ourselves and we trust our technology, and we trust what we can do because we are going to be gods of our own lives. Or in the case of, the despots and the tyrants, we're going to be God of your lives.
Yeah, right. Right. And the thing about it is you can see that theme of technology and pagan spirituality working through history. And we have glimpses of this. Like for instance, Nazi Germany. So you have high technology, with the rockets and all kinds of things that were being developed, and at the same time, pagan spirituality going all through Nazism and Hitler himself. It was Nazism and what happened in Germany kind of like a microcosm of what's happening now globally, where you have this infusion of technology and pagan spirituality. And here's the scary part. I know where it led. We all know in history what the Nazis did. Are we seeing the same thing built, but yet it's on a global scale, Carl?
Yeah, I look at what happened in Nazi Germany as a model of sorts. So this is really interesting. I'm glad you brought this up. This is fascinating. This is already a few weeks ago. I started a Substack page. Okay. And on my Substack page, I've got a number of articles and reports there. Some free, some paid. But if any of your listeners are a paid member of my Substack, and my Substack is called Convergence, Power and Belief. So just look up my name or look up Convergence, Power and Belief.
Okay.
Go to the report, Magical Reenchantment Part 4, Case Study, Nazi Germany and the Power of Myth. And there I explore that sense of Nazis' interest in pagan spirituality and how it emerged out of the 18th century in Germany, the 19th century in Germany. Carl Jung, his worldview is pulled out of the same milieu as well. And in fact, for members who want to jump onto that page, I provide a document drop, and there, as far as I could tell, I did a hard search through the web. I could not find it on the web anywhere, but I had hard copies in my library of two documents from the 1930s outlining the Nazi Germany's reshift or change of Protestant Christianity to reflect this mythic Germanic paganism.
Wow.
And so I've scanned those, and for those who want to join my Convergence Power and Belief Substack page, you got access. You download them, grab them, they're yours. Just because we can't let that history disappear.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely. So this is the fascinating convergence. The Nazis, one of their legacies was this sense of the bureaucratic mind and the importance of technology as a tool to transform their own civilization. It was one of their left behinds is a sense of technocracy that emerges as an end product of that thinking.
Yeah.
And that being tied to a pagan, mythologically grounded sense of spiritual purpose.
Yeah.
Higher purpose.
Right.
The two come together. Nazi Germany is a case model.
Wow.
A sad, horrible, destructive case model.
Yeah. But and that's the thing is, and this is what blows me away, Carl, and I want you to comment on this. So I'm seeing more and more Christians attracted to this psychedelic thing, but as you're mentioning, it's tied to all kinds of other things. Technocracy, it's tied to technology, it's tied to pagan spirituality and all this other things and experience. And yet I'm seeing it go more in that direction. And the problem is, when someone adopts pagan spirituality, and look, the Bible makes it very clear in the book of James, what you believe transfers into how you behave. And the scary part about this is the behavior that I saw in Nazi Germany. And now I'm seeing pagan spirituality take its form, whether it's called wokeism or whatever you want to call it. But I'm seeing now that the option for people is, well, we'll just kill him. We'll just kill Donald Trump. Or we'll kill Jews because they're the bad people now and they're committing atrocities, so to speak, and they got the wrong facts and whatever. And so now it's okay, we'll just kill Jews, or I'll kill the guy who's the CEO of the insurance and I'll just kill him, I'll just take him out. Because to me, that seems like the pagan answer in their behavior. They're not civilized where we don't like someone in office, we're gonna try to vote them out and we'll do the political process. I got people listening to on the internet saying, well, just take out Donald Trump and kill him.
And the love of many grows cold.
Yeah. And it just seems that pagan mentality, well, we'll just kill them. We'll kill babies, in abortion. We'll just kill our political opponents. That's where it starts ending up where, the days of Noah, days of Lot type of things start coming back to my mind. And I'm seeing more and more of our culture become violent. That violence is the option. And I think that's important because You go back to Nazi Germany and you got them killing people left and right. It wasn't just simply the Jews, the gypsies, the homosexuals, everybody was just, anyone that stood in the way, we're just kick them out.
Right. Because there was a fundamental religious spiritual shift that had already happened. And it fits in that Romans 1 context where we worship and serve created things rather than the creator. And so what happens, Brandon, when we all of a sudden make this connection and say, oh, well, there's no difference between a person, a plant, a deer, a virus. There's no fundamental difference. We become disposable, dispensable. Last year when I was at Burning Man, I was at a workshop on giving nature fundamental human rights. And it was really interesting because there's a legal movement, okay, an international legal movement pushing this. This is not in a vacuum. This is not a nutty side idea. It's nutty, all right, and it should be left in the dustbin. But there's a legal movement towards granting nature the same legal rights as humans. Well, that now dehumanizes mankind. It takes us down. So the Christian understanding is not that it's oneness. It's not that man, God, and nature all share the same essence, or that there is no fundamental difference between nature and humanity. No, the biblical worldview is God is separate, distinct. He is utterly unique. There is nothing and no one in creation that is equal to him or that is somehow comparable to him. That being said, he still instills a special value in humanity above the natural world, in that he has created us within the concept of his image as eternal beings. So there's a higher value. You have a higher value than the rabbit that ran across the road in front of you.
Totally.
And so when we shred that and we say, well, there's no real higher value to humanity, we begin to dehumanize those who are politically maybe opposed to us, or ethnically opposed to, or different than us, or worse, maybe they have a religious underpinning that says, there is a transcendent God and you're not it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's like, oh, the Judeo-Christian world ran, especially the Jewish worldview, the Genesis worldview ran hard in the Romans 1 worldview of Nazi Germany. And the clash was catastrophic to the Jewish people. But I mean, that's the path of death when we claim that we can be as God, that there is, and that mankind has no higher value than what we assign it.
Yes.
To have.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me go over another rabbit trail. You mentioned Carl Jung. Okay, and you might understand this, that Jordan Peterson is a Jungian, and Jordan Peterson's one of the most popular guys on the planet right now. And a lot of people like what Jordan Peterson says. I agree with the masculinity thing, and he goes against wokeism, but he's bringing Carl Jung's philosophy or whatever you want to call it, spirituality, into now what he is discussing. And he has taken Jung's idea of the archetype into Christianity now, and pushing the archetype that Christ is an archetype, but not really a real man. But it's the idea of Jung's philosophy, I guess, of seeing these archetypes in the world, but not taking literally what the scriptures say. Not taking the stories of Noah's flood literally, but taking them as an archetype. And what I'm scared about, and I want you to comment on this, is that Jungian philosophy is now making its way into Christianity via Jordan Peterson, who says he acts like a believer, even though when atheists tried to pin him down, he met with 20 atheists and they tried to pin him down, are you a Christian? He wouldn't answer them. So speak to the danger of Jungian, I guess, this mindset, because Jungian came out of, like you're saying, Germany. What's the problem with this if Christians latch onto this?
Okay, so Oh, this is what I'm going to say right now regarding Jordan Peterson. He, like yourself, I agree. He's got some great stuff. He has some great argumentation on issues of liberty, on manhood. I mean, he's done a really important and a good job in bringing forward things that the culture has beaten down hard.
Right. I agree with you totally.
Give him credit on that, 100%.
Yes.
I really wish he would jettison Carl Jung.
Yes.
Get him out, get it out, and now look at the reality of Scripture, not through the lens of Carl Jung, with its symbolism, archetypes, and the layering of meaning that all of a sudden you're adding things to it that don't exist and never did exist in its original context, because you've got a what is really a pagan lens. So Carl Jung was very careful to make sure that he guarded his words regarding the paganization or the pagan element of what he was teaching. Though if you go into his own literature, I have his red book, or if you go into some of the biographies, I would certainly recommend somebody, if you're interested in this, read The Aryan Christ. Though, all of a sudden you're going, oh, the guy is completely steeped in a mystical worldview, a pagan worldview. And I mean, Carl Jung himself played around with yoga. He wrote about yoga. He played within these realms of this intersection between psychology and spirituality, esotericism, the experience, the feeling. All of this kind of plays into it. But when you're going through his book, the Red Book, which I understand why, and now I've gone through it, I understand why his family or his estate didn't want it published until after he died. It's basically an acknowledgement that he is having a spiritual experience, and he is dealing a one-on-one with an entity in his brain, in his home, a spiritual, we'd call it a demon, because that's what it is. It's a demon, flat out.
Wow.
Who is whispering to him and teaching him and guiding him in these principles and these concepts.
Yeah.
So, Jordan, please throw Carl Jung out the window. Carl Jung is one of the most important figures behind the birth of the New Age and the shift out of the Christian worldview into the modern sense of re-enchantment, this sense of I find my purpose and my meaning in the collective. I find my purpose and my meaning in the wisdom of the crowd, and in the wisdom of our ancestors and all this stuff. It's like, no, throw that out.
Right. And like I said, I like some of the stuff that Jordan Peterson's doing, but the problem is it has this muddy mixture, and I don't think, there's a lot of Christians that can filter that. I mean, he's done a program on the Gospels, he's done a program on Exodus, and he's brought in other people around, and it's been, some of it's really good, and appreciate it. But I don't think a lot of Christians have enough discernment to filter that out, and so therefore, when they get 8 and 9 million views, that's significant of pushing, a worldview that's not necessarily Christian. So here's my thing, Carl, and I got to wrap things up because I've taken too much of your time, man. What can the discerning Christian do with all this? I mean, it doesn't, to me, seem that anything's going to stop a lot of this, that we're heading full steam. Okay, so if we can't stop it, then what can we do, Carl?
Our job, Brandon, is not to stop it. Okay, our job is not to stop it. Our job is to inform, equip, encourage, challenge, build each other up in love. Take this information, and now as your neighbors, your family, your church, it begins to be influenced by this, all of a sudden is rubbing shoulders with you. You can be wise to it, and then look for that opportunity to say, hey, we've taken the time to study some of this stuff, and let me give you the alternative. Let me give you a gospel alternative. Let me show you a different way. Absolutely. Let me help you understand what you have rejected in Christianity. Yeah. And oftentimes the culture has rejected Christianity without even knowing why they've rejected Christianity. I've encountered this with people. Yeah. And instead, let me show you the proper way. So I think it's really important, Brandon, that we take this information, we take what's happening in the culture around us, and now we literally are ambassadors for Christ.
Yeah.
Let's, as Paul did, use the culture. When he entered Athens, he used their own culture.
Absolutely.
To all of a sudden go, hey, let me tell you. So we have that ability as well. We have that opportunity. In fact, as the world becomes increasingly enmeshed in these very things that are a challenge to the faith, it opens up a space for us to say, look, this is what Christianity really teaches.
Yeah.
This is the importance of sound doctrine, and do so in a way that's loving and gracious, with truth and with mercy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. But at the same time, for those of you in church leadership, and Brandon, you're in church leadership.
Yeah.
You guys need to be especially aware, because you're going to see this all of a sudden impacting your own congregants, your own church family members, their children, their grandchildren, they themselves. And so in order to be able to properly begin to address these issues and help them work it through and bring them back to the living faith, we need to have our eyes open to what's really happening around us.
Absolutely.
The time to put our head in the sand or keep our head in the sand is long gone, because when our head is in the sand, number one, we can't breathe. Number two, somebody's going to kick us in the rear end, deservedly so. And we don't know where our enemy is or even where our friends are. We've cloistered ourselves, and we have done so in ignorance. No, the time is now to pull our head out of the sand, study God's word, understand the culture, be ambassadors, period.
You're totally right, because you think about this, Carl, what you just said is excellent. The modern psychology world is going to adopt this psychedelic thing to cure PTSD, because it is helping people with PTSD. So all of a sudden, I can see one of my congregation people go to a secular psychologist or psychiatrist and say, hey, I'm having PTSD. Well, here's some psychedelics. We're going to put you on a 3-day treatment, and your PTSD will be over. I can totally see that happening, Carl. And if the churches are not equipped with this information, saying, hey, whoa, stop, don't do the psychedelics, because I get, it's Satan's kind of lie of, I'll give you something, but you give me something back in return. It's kind of like a Faustian bargain. I'll cure your PTSD, but I'm going to open you up to the occult. So I can totally see it. You're totally right. Okay, Carl. If people don't know how to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you? How do they find you? How do they get your resources, man?
Sure. So there's a few different things. One, you could go to forcingchange.org. It's a website that I developed to archive my older material. And you can sign up and access some stuff. You can go to Substack, Convergence, Power and Belief. Look me up. My name, Carl Teichrib. You can go to gameofgods.ca, which has excerpts of my book. You can find me on Twitter, on Facebook, social media, and certainly avail yourself of the information that's floating around out there. Just type my name in. It's the internet. The good, the bad, the ugly is all there on the web, and I'm there. We're all there, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Oh, quickly.
Yes.
Sorry. 2 resources going back to the issue of Nazis and the worldview change. I cannot remember the author's name, but there are 2 books worth the study if you're interested in the connection between Nazism and drug culture. And that is a book called Blitz and then Tripped. And I believe the author's first name is Roland, but I have to look that up. I'm sorry. Either of those books both one deals on how meth was introduced to the German soldiers and how entrenched Germany was in a drug culture during the 1930s. And then the second book, Tripped, is on how that moved from Nazi Germany into the realm of the CIA and then into the realm of American culture.
And you mentioned the CIA, man, and I can take another episode to go through that, because the CIA, I hear, was doing experiments with LSD, astral projection, what I forget the term of viewing, outer room viewing. I can't remember the term, where they were using psychic abilities to try to find information. And so that's another story,
remote viewing.
man.
Yeah, remote viewing.
Remote viewing, that's the name. That's the they were doing remote viewing, and I'm like, what? What is
The
going
Stargate
on?
program. Yeah,
Yeah.
MK Ultra, and then the Stargate program, and there's lots of stuff. By the way, Brandon, it's not just that three-letter agency. The Russians do it. The Chinese did it. This is where man will go.
Yeah.
This is just where man will go.
Well, I got to bring it back on. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the CIA and the remote viewing and all. And like you say, it's more than the CIA doing this because I keep shaking my head thinking, oh my goodness, it's worse than I thought, Carl, what these people are involved in. And it's definitely occultic and demonic and satanic. So, no, I got to bring you on. The good news is you're coming out to California, the land of fruits and nuts. You're going to be with us on October 4th. And so I want to make sure everybody knows you're coming. And guys, I just want to encourage you. Carl's your guy for information, man. He is the guy that you need to get, his information, the books, his Substack, all that stuff that he writes. He is phenomenal. Carl, I can't thank you enough for all the work you're doing, man. You are helping pastors out like myself. I don't have the time to do all that primary research, but you do, and it helps me to be equipped to help my people. So thank you for all that you're doing, man. I cannot thank you enough. And you're going into the trenches, brother. You're going to Burning Man and all these conferences. You're going to a conference where they worship the sun, for goodness sake. What in the world? And then you went to, what is it called? Paganacon or something like that?
Yeah, I was at Paganacon again. I've been there a few times. It's quite the event, that's for sure. No, but I mean, but I get it, Brandon, this is important. You guys are in the trenches in your church. You guys are in the trenches in your community. God has, for some reason, placed this farm boy, this country kid out of Manitoba, in some different spots and allowed me to be an observer so that I can tell you what's happening, so that you can be equipped, so you can be informed.
Well, thank you, because I owe a debt of gratitude to you. Your rewards are going to be great in heaven. So thank you for all the work you're doing. I'm going to bring you back. I'm going to have my assistant try to schedule you another time. I want to talk about this other stuff that we mentioned, and I'm fascinated. But I think the information needs to get out, like you talked about today. So thank you, Carl, for everything you're doing, brother. I love you, man, and keep firing the ball, man. You're doing great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, God bless you guys, and thank you for joining us. Again, go to all Carl's website and information, get it all you can, and fill your head with all, and get equipped to handle what's going on in the world. And remember what the Lord said, when you see these things begin to happen, look up, lift up your heads, for your redemption draws near. God bless you guys. We'll see you next time. Hey, everybody, I need your help, and I need your help in 3 different areas. First of all, I need your help on our channel. Our channel is working against an algorithm. And so we need you to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. And if you'll do that, that helps us get the message out to many people. It outdoes the algorithm that's working against us. So if you'll do those things, real simple, like, subscribe, hit the bell, it'll get our message out to as many people as possible. The second thing you could do to help us out is prayer. We get a lot of pushback online from not only human beings, but from the demonic realm as well. And so we need prayer. And so if you can pray for our ministry, that would greatly help us out. And third, it takes a lot of financial resources to put these programs on. And so we do a lot of filming, with a lot of editing, a lot of going on location. In fact, sometimes we film in Israel. And we film in Turkey and different places like that. And so it takes a lot of money to do these special programs that we put together. And so we need finances. And so if the Lord puts it on your heart to help us, that would be greatly appreciated by us and our ministry. So those are the 3 ways you can help us. Pray to the Lord how you could do that. Real easy. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, pray, and financially support us. God bless you. Thank you so much.